Mr. P. Manickam, founder and CEO, Tessolve, on the topic semiconductor infrastructure opportunities in changing commodities models. A brief introduction. Mr. Manickam founded Tessolve in 2003 with a dream of creating a productization company from physical silicon to high-volume manufacturing. His work experience being in product companies, fabless companies in Silicon Valleys and high-volume factories in Singapore, Malaysia, and Japan is a unique combination to succeed in new product introduction cycle. He started his career in Texas Instruments as a test engineer and later with Fairchild National Semiconductor. Ladies and gentlemen, please extend a very warm welcome to Mr. P. Manickam.
Good afternoon. This is probably not the best time to talk, but I'll try to make it as lively as possible so you won't go to sleep. It's really an honor, and I'm quite humbled that we are one of the platinum sponsor, right? Being a small company, that's a big decision, right? And to have our names along with all the big boys. So looks like we've come a long way. Very, very proud of it. Just to give you a little bit of history and, very nostalgic in the sense. 2004, when I wanted to start Tessolve, along with Mr. Veerapan, probably most of you know, we had a small meeting here in Leela. Maybe about 10, 12 people. I just wanted to, throw this idea about a test lab and test engineering and see if there will be any support. There was, these guys were heading like TI and ADI and so forth, right? And all of them were like very enthusiastic. Yes, this is exactly what we need. We're doing this. We want to get to the next level. We want to bring back from corporate, bringing up silicon and so on. That gave us a lot of excitement. Sometimes, in life, you just run because of excitement, right? You really don't know what is the truth. But, and at that point, we also, because I had that experience of Fabless Semiconductor Association in the US, we mooted this idea about an India Semiconductor Association. And that's how I think, later, a few months later, India Semiconductor Association started. So in a way, Tessolve has been one of the seeding guys in this. And I'm proud that today, by joining this platinum sponsor, in the agenda that's going to happen in the next 10, 15, 20 years, I'm sure Tessolve will play a role in some way in the semiconductor or electronics in India. So the story is, there's a lot of stories, but, at that point, we had no idea. But one thing was very clear to me. Whatever we do, we wanted to do it in a way that it's going to last for decades to come. Right? We wanted to create a company that will last. So any decision we made, right, we feel like, we should build the company brick by brick and not try to rush it or, the market also didn't allow us to rush, by the way, right? Pretty soon, within 2 years, I didn't have any money. We almost went bankrupt, right? So, but the idea is that we persevered and we built the company one brick at a time. And today I'm very proud to say that, we've become so valuable that one of the largest family businesses, Hero Group, has taken a major stake in our company. So they saw some value. And they're also a family business that builds companies for decades. So I'm very, very happy that, we've partnered finally with somebody that sees value in us, and hopefully, we'll create a legacy. Okay. This is how when we first took some land, and this was the artist's impression about what the building would look like. In fact, when I came to Bangalore, coming from the US, right, I didn't have any idea about what is the value of land and building. But then Veerappan said, your business may go down, but at least you'll have the building. So we ended up, actually putting some money in and trying to build the building. So whatever money I had, half of it went into this. So this is groundbreaking. You can obviously see Veerappan there. He had a little bit more hair at that time, I guess. This is the building. This was our home. And this is the people, the soul of the company. The satisfaction that we have is that we have put more than 3,000, I don't know what the exact number is, of fresh graduates through our system, our training, and to do core engineering work, right? Really core engineering work, really hard work. And I'm really, really proud to say that our guys can stand head to head with anybody in the world. When I go and visit some of the customers and so on, right? You'll see Tessolve engineers are really kicking out there. This is a little bit of our story. I'll just take about 10 minutes about our story, and then I'll talk about where I see the business model going. So just bear with me, okay? This is an opportunity for me. I paid for it, for a platinum sponsor, so you guys have to listen, right? Whether you like it or not. It's a great story, okay? You guys will like it. So we started 2004. As I said, right, very reluctantly, put money into the building and land, but it was still very worth it. We spent a lot of money in the infrastructure. So right from day one, right, we planted our seed that we are going to be here, right? We were not thinking about, trying something and running away, right? So we spent a lot of money on the infrastructure, in the lab and putting equipment and so forth, right? We went through, as I said, right, when I talked to the guys in 2004 with some of the heads of the companies, they're all very excited. But once I started, and when we had the lab and everything going, when I called them, most of them did not pick up the phone. Because, they had to break the way, work was done, right? Most of the work was done back in the US or so on. So they had a hard time trying to convince, right, that, hey, we have a lab over here, can we do it? And also, right, they had to show that, it can be done, right? So we had to prove ourselves. So my business plan was just, thrown into the garbage. So we had to start all over from again. Instead of becoming profitable in 3 years, it probably took us 10 years to become profitable. It was a journey. So the first businesses actually we got were from people I did not know. So all the people that I knew, maybe they knew about me too much. They were kind of reluctant, maybe, Raja, I don't know whether this guy can actually deliver or not. But the story is that, hey, as you keep on plugging on it, right, we managed to break through one at a time. And the whole business plan changed, but we kept on moving. And along the way, we never deviated from the fact that we want to be the best in what we do. So for example, test engineering. My background is test engineering. I knew what a test engineering person should be, what a tested product should be. So we invested in everything that would make the product the best tested product ever. I don't know whether customers actually cared for it, but that's what I cared for. So we said, look, we need to have our design, our board designs. So we brought board design internally. We would go through, a lot of pains, right, to make sure that the boards work. So every time we have a customer, we know that, it's going to work. So we had to do things to bring under our control. We added IC design services because, again, right, it was again customer driven and so on. And then we have a reliability lab. The idea is, one of the other thoughts I had was, the reason why Silicon Valley was very successful was that there was a lot of entrepreneurs, mom and pop type entrepreneurs, right? There'll be a guy who will just do a reliability lab. A guy would just do sputtering. So there was a lot of those kind of little guys, but I didn't see that kind of, enthusiasm here. Maybe the exposure was not here. Everybody was happy becoming a design engineer, on a service business, right? But so we had to actually fight that grain, right? And so we said, okay, if 4 or 5 engineers get together and they have an idea for a chip or a module, we should have the ecosystem here to enable them to make that. And that's what we went out to make. So 2015, we started the lab, and I think by, in a couple of months, we'll have an entire reliability lab where you can qualify, whether for automotive or for any other precise work you need, right? You can qualify the chip. And last year, as I mentioned, we had Hero Group wanted to come in and take a stake in us. What they saw in us, I believe, was something very unique. They believe that they are a very strong manufacturing company. And I always had this belief that we could do excellent manufacturing in India, innovative manufacturing in India. And I was looking for somebody who would believe in that. And I'm happy to say that Hero Group was one of the rare, large family business in India that actually believes in this. Because we have tried almost all the big names that you can think of. Everybody, when you talk to them about semiconductor, they run away. So we're all over the place. Again, one of the things unique about us is we're very close to the production sites, right? So you see a lot of companies in India, especially service companies, they are closer to US or Europe and so forth. But we are very close to Asia because we participate in the post-silicon activity, post-wafer activity a lot. So one of the things I see is more and more of this, NPI and innovation happening in this part of the world. This broadly is all our services that we offer, right? So as I mentioned, we started off with test product engineering, and slowly we went up and down the food chain. And the last one we added was the embedded systems. Again, right, all of these are linked to our primary understanding of the chip. There's more details. This is another chart that I'm very proud of, right? After all, right, we are all made, the company is nothing but, the great people that we have. The chart on the right shows you the quality and the experience level of our guys. So when we started, it was all very young people, and now we have, people who are 8 to 10 years experience. And most of them have come out through the Tessolve DNA. We have our own DNA. You should talk to some of our Tessolve guys. We just love what we do. And I believe it. Everybody. These are some of the things that we do differently as well. We have our own labs. We bring up silicon in our own labs. We have all kind of equipment. Lately, we actually purchased a PCB fab as well for prototypes and high fast turns out of Malaysia. We have the ESD. This reminds me, in 2003, before I started Tessolve, I left my cushy job in a bigger company, and I had to do something, right? So I'm quite familiar with ESD and latch up. So I started my own ESD latch up lab in San Jose. and it was a company of one. So I used to write the test program, and then, ESD launcher, you got to, test the chip, and then deliver it, and then take another, get some other chips, and go back and forth. So my wife and I, we used to just basically live in the lab. So sometimes, I take a nap, and then she'll change the parts for me. That's how we started. So now moving on to, that's the Tessolve story. What I believe, the business model and what the infrastructure is moving towards to. I believe the infrastructure is getting to a point where, you have all the high speed, the connectivity, the optimized, so whether it's a personal connectivity or system to system connectivity and so on, right? So, we talked about all the speakers this morning, right? The government is doing its part. People are, getting familiar with, how to connect and use it. On the storage side as well, right? There's a huge infrastructure that has gone into it and is building day by day. The users today are mainly, from what I can see, is especially in India, right? Entertainment is a big one, right? People watch movies on the phones, on the go, sports events and stuff like that. And access to the internet is very, very easy, right? Offices, factories are getting into some sort of automation and so on. So all these things are happening. Now we go to so these are all very obvious, and there are big companies who want to do it. But as you go deeper, now what else do you do? Right? Usually in anything, right? The obvious things happens first, and then the not so obvious things. What are the non-obvious things that I see? I'll just give you some examples. So these are, I just picked up three of them that I came across, right? One of them was, you got these 7-Eleven stores, right, all over the world. And one of the big challenges for them is theft, right? Theft by their own employees, right? Especially cigarettes, right? Cigarette packs are very expensive, right? Most countries, in Singapore, it's very, very expensive. I think each cigarette costs like $1 or something because it's a lot of the tax and so on. So people steal this, right? So somebody came up with this IoT kind of, so every time that somebody picks up a pack, it measures the distance. So they have at the back, they have some kind of a sensor. So it's a little application, right? It's a real life application. Another one this guy told me was, gecko or lizards, right? They attach themselves to like ships and so forth, right? So if a ship is traveling from India to Australia, some of these geckos are on board the ship, right? And when they reach Australia, they are known as invasive, right? They're foreign animals or lizards, right? So, and they can do harm to the environment there because that environment is not suited or cannot handle this, right? So they have they needed to remove this, right? A ship is a huge ship, and it's got a lot of container goods and all that. How do you find this? So this guy had a solution using audio, right? Because geckos make a certain type of sound, right? So this guy picked that up. And so it's a small company, right? And he had that knowledge about looking at audio. So he came out with a little device, right? To figure out how to catch these geckos before it goes to the port. It's a small business, right? He's not going to sell, hundreds of millions of parts, but it's a real life solution. Another one was a sick cattle, right? So we have cows and bulls and all that all over the place. And apparently, I'm not a doctor, but he said that if you're, just like human beings, if you're able to monitor the temperature of a cow, and within 1 hour, if you see the temperature change, and you're able to detect and find it, and give it a shot or something, you can save it, right? And this is again, right, these cows are grazing all over the place, right? A few kilometers. So how do you have a mesh network which is not expensive, able to find out which cattle is having a little bit of a higher temperature? So these are all, real life, right? What I call real life solutions. So a lot of these solutions have to be customized to that local condition, right? Customized to local condition. So the question is our infrastructure ready to solve the real life solutions? And what would be the business model for that? So I think the infrastructure is getting there, and it will keep on, fine tuning, and there'll be big boys playing in that because there's big money in it. They will invest in the real backhaul infrastructure, right? People want to play in the cloud, in the storage, 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi, I don't know, whatever, right? So there'll be people there. So then I looked at, where the companies today, where the product companies today. When I say product companies, I'm referring more to semiconductor companies. Most of them have plenty of cash. They don't know what to do with it. They've got so much cash, I think, because they've squeezed the suppliers. If you go talk to the manufacturing guys, they really hate the customers. Whether it's an OSAT or wafer fab, you see most of the wafer fabs don't make money, but then Qualcomm makes a lot of money. You wonder why. So money making is not evenly distributed. Are they Qualcomm? They are my best customer, by the way. Very little innovation because they squeeze so much, right? There's not much innovation that has taken place, and this is one of the problems. Borrowings are relatively cheap. So where do they grow, right? Their decisions are typically made by financial returns. Bundling mindset, right? So they keep buying companies and then bundle this, bundle that. Okay, I already have a insight into an automotive, one chip. Now I need to bundle it with 3-4 chips. So those are the decisions that drives their growth. It's very hard to justify innovation. See, when I was in TI, I could think about some idea, and it will get a listening. Somebody would listen to it and say, yeah, maybe, Raja, maybe you can try it on the side. But that's all gone these days. If you want to be a senior VP, you better toe the line, right? You just show them when is the return on investment. A senior VP will never take up your case and say, yeah, I have, by the way, this brilliant guy who's got this brilliant idea, but it'll probably take 10 years to make money. You think the senior VP will take it up? Probably not. So basically, product companies are becoming larger, right? More profitable by squeezing. But there's hardly any organic growth. But this is my view. Usually, most people don't agree. But this is what I believe. So the business model, when you say larger, right, basically what it means is scaling. So large companies go after large markets, whether it's cell phones or automotive, and maybe there are others. Large companies want to operate further up the food chain, right? As they become bigger, right, it becomes difficult for them to interact closer and closer to the customer, right? Because they become further and further away from the customer. There's less interaction when I say real customers, right? So who are the real customers, right? So the real customers are the guy who is putting this tag on the cattle, or the guy who's putting this stuff on the ship to detect geckos, right? Or the guy who's, planting stuff in the 7-Elevens. Right? To me, those are the real customers. But for big companies, right, to interact with them would become more and more difficult. So large companies really become more like aggregators rather than solution providers. I believe there is a role for solution providers. I believe technology leads to democracy. It's available, pretty much, right? If you want to start a company today, right, a lot of these things are available. I believe solutions come from bottoms up. The ideas that I talked to you about, right? It came from a bottoms up. I don't think somebody from Intel looked at how a gecko would make noise, right? So it's really a bottoms up approach. And this is another belief I have is historically, if you look at, whether you look at a Qualcomm or a Broadcom or a Google or Facebook and so on, right? They were formed by, or they were founded, or ideas were by a few individuals, not necessarily by the big companies that existed at that time. So to me, technology is usually driven in, start small. And then, some of them become big like Qualcomm and Broadcom and so on. But I think the innovation starts at a very, very basic level and then builds up. And I think the bigger companies are, just because of the size and the business models they have and the return on investments that they have to show to their shareholders and so forth, are moving further and further up. So what I call these companies, right, these smaller solution providers, as idea companies. So this, what I believe, is what's coming. Or what, maybe a potential solution. So large companies, right, help create a platform where we can flourish. And I don't know what that platform is, but something that will encourage, the idea companies to participate. Invest in suppliers, vendors. I believe this is where the innovation is going to happen. Because we're hungry. The suppliers, the vendors, they're very hungry. They're hungry for business. They want to be part of the system. So rather than squeezing, give them an opportunity. That's where innovation is going to happen. That's where your new business is going to come from. This is my view about India and Indians, and please just take it with a grain of salt, okay? We have all of the world's problem, right? We don't need to go search for a problem, right? There are many countries which are searching for problems. I just came from Singapore. The guy is trying to solve some problem, but there's no problem there. Everything is working, right? What is the problem, right? Whereas here, I come here, Saturday, the water pipe, I opened it, just air is coming. Then, because I haven't opened it for 1 month, right? The air condition is not working anymore. The broadband is not working. I mean, you name it, right? Even coming here this morning, right, was a challenge. So we have every problem. I mean, look at doctors, right? I mean, doctors, Indian doctors. My sister is a doctor. She's in the US. She studied in Chennai. And she has seen so many different cases of people, right? All kind of sickness. And then she goes to US, she's specializing only in one thing, right? Because, even as a doctor, right? One of the reasons why I believe Indian doctors are good, because they get to see so many different patients, right? They've come across so many sickness. So what I believe is, we have problems, right? We have tons of problems. And if we're able to solve our problem, India's problem, we have a world market. Because a lot of our problems are there also out in the real world. So we don't have to look for a problem. We have a culture for solving real life problems. This is my personal experience, right? With my grandfather and so forth. He always said, you got to be a good person, try to help other people. I mean, this is how we are taught all the time. We are never thought about, let's put some money and then see how you can make it 20x. I don't know. I mean, at least I wasn't taught that way, right? Economics was not part of our psyche, right? And I think, a lot of our culture is that. We'd like to solve problems. This is also my basic belief. interacting with a lot of our Indian people, this is what I do believe. We would, we like happiness more than anything else. I guess everybody likes it, but some people like money more than happiness. So we find happiness not necessarily money making, right? So money can come, right? Like the guy who's, found a solution for this geckos, he'll make some money, right? But he's probably not going to make, hundreds of millions of dollars. But he's fine with that, right? He says, hey, this is great. Or the guy who solved this sickness in the cattle, right? He's really happy that he saved a cow. And we have a lot of these kind of examples in India. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for the little guys. The business model is changing. Like Ron was talking about, where do you monetize and all that. So I think, the real message is, the little guys, the guys who are really, the guys who are solving the real problems in life are going to become powerful. Because you are the guys who are ultimately going to monetize this, and you will see, just like Ron was talking about, where the bigger companies may have to give away the chips for free, may have to give away the systems for free. Because ultimately the guy who's solving the real problem is the guy who is closest to the customer, and the customer is willing to, he sees the value and is willing to pay. So that's why I said it before, right? Technology creates democracy. So I do believe that the power will come to these little guys who are solving the real problems, and the big guys will be dependent on them. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if there are any questions.
Hopefully somebody is there.
Volume is not there. So is it? Sir, hi, I am Nitin, and I had a very wonderful, concentration to all the words that you spoke, and really. And honestly, I don't have a question as such, but I sure want to catch up with you for just 2 minutes whenever it is possible for you, today or tomorrow. The story happens to be similar. Actually, we're both riding the same boat, I believe. So I'd like to really catch up with you.
So your mantra of smaller companies being more nimble and agile, and they will really make the larger companies dependent, right? But the other philosophy which is emerging is that larger companies like the Googles, etc., are behaving more like smaller companies, and they will also become more innovative. Don't you think so? I mean, they can easily imbibe this same management mantra, isn't it?
No. I agree with you, right? I don't know about Google, but I can tell you a little bit maybe about Intel, right? Because we do interact with them. They are trying to be, hundreds of companies, right, within Intel, right? So there's IoT, they understand some of this, right? But it's just very difficult. It's just very difficult. The kind of flexibility we have, right, as a small company, the decision making and the risk taking, and so what, if it happens, it happens, right? If not otherwise, right? It's very difficult. Just the structure of, how they are rewarded, how they move about. So I do feel that there is they may partner with you. They may even invest in companies, which are smaller companies. But the nimbleness and the fulfillment that you get. See, that's another thing, right? See, if you want to be a big guy in Google, right, you better be in the mainstream, right? That's how people think, right? You don't want to be, some skunk work somewhere in the corner, right? If you're within Google. So who drives that, right? So the best brains, where will they work?
We'll take one last question, if there is one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please give Mr. Raja Manickam a huge round of applause. I'd like to request Mr. Rajesh Krishnan, Vice President, Memory Solutions, Samsung Semiconductor, India Research, and IESA Executive Council to please present a small token of our appreciation to Mr. Raja Manickam. I'd like to thank you once again for that keynote address.